Talking about this whole concept of fake news and what it does to us. And Mufis, by the way, I really loved your presentation and you actually validated a lot of the points that we were talking about. See, the thing is that when we're talking about fake news, what we really need to address is what is it doing to us? What is the after effect? What is the impact? And the word fake news cannot just be used loosely for any kind of information that is spreading. What we need to ask ourselves is why are we worried? Why is there so much of discussion? Okay, and as I think he said, it always did spread like wildfire. But I think what has happened is that the fire has become much more intense, and the forests are far too closely together, and it's spreading from one forest to the other much faster because of social media primarily, and because the world has become a much smaller place. Also, the other thing that is important, and that is all about keeping it real, and that's what the theme of this presentation or this session is that fake news needs to be divided into various categories. We need to prioritize what needs to be addressed immediately, not the news per se, but what it's doing to us. And we need to categorize different kinds of impacts that fake news has and how to address each one of them. So for instance, I've kind of roughly divided into three or four categories. The first fallout which is affecting all of us at this point of time is actually violence and death. You're losing your close ones for no rhyme or reason at all. You're losing family, you're losing friends, and so on and so forth. And it all started with various reasons. For instance, when did lynching first start? When this whole movement against beef started, and people who were even either transporting beef or even storing beef at home, or expected or suspected of eating it or carrying it on trains, it all started there. So there was an absolute mob operation in place. And why did the mobsters get that kind of a leeway? Why did they get the courage to do it? Why did they think that they could get away with it? Because it was definitely a part of a program of the government, of the ruling party. It's very clear that the ruling party obviously did not kind of officially mandate it. The Prime Minister made a few noises saying that we do not tolerate it. But on one hand, you pay lip service to taking action against any kind of violence in this. On the other hand, you let the mob completely free and wild to do what they want. And that is the hypocrisy of this is extremely important, and that needs to be combated. Who are these armies who are doing it? Do the social media wings of different political parties, are they empowered and mandated? And research has shown, and we know this, we've got into it, is the fact that they're not only mandated, they're hired, they're paid, they do this for a living. And that is what is extremely important. It just not suffice. It doesn't suffice for us to say that fake news is bad and we need to tackle it. We need to first recognize where it is coming from, and the fact that this is not something which is just happening out of the blue. It's an organized, orchestrated campaign, and that needs to be addressed. So a lot of community building and sensitization can address it to a little extent, but I think what is most important is to let people be sensitized to the fact that this is happening as per part of a plan, and that needs to be stopped. And so that's one. So if we divide all this into various priorities, the first is the fallout which leads to death. The second is, and which is closely linked to the first one, is the fact that this divides society, in the sense that this program is also used to break people up. See, for instance, for long elections have been won on the basis of caste, especially if you look at places like Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh to a certain extent, and Bihar, where elections have been won or lost on the basis of caste groups. Now we realize that it is not just enough, because people are getting more and more sensitive. You see, politically in Uttar Pradesh, you have the Bahujan Samaj Party and the Samajwadi Party. Everybody thought that till the end of time they will not come together, but ultimately they did come together for politics or otherwise. So basically, the biggest thing that continues to divide our country is is actually religion more than caste. And what is happening is the fake news is not spontaneous. It's being orchestrated in such a way that this division gets created. Third, of course, is the third fallout of fake news is misinformation. The 2000 rupee note story or the chip story, but it does not really kind of harm you, but it misinforms you and creates unnecessary panic or causes you to take certain decisions that you would not have taken. I won't say it is completely harmful, but it needs to be completely addressed. Fourthly, and I think most importantly, the biggest fallout of fake news, or the biggest impact it can have, is the fact that the government is behind it. In the sense that the government of the day, when it decides to manipulate and give information in order to present a better picture for themselves, in order to say that they have delivered on promises, and they actually twist it, and that is what is consumed by a large number of people, and political decisions are taken on the basis of that false information. That, I think, is also very, very serious impact. I'll give you a quick examples, and these are the non-lynching examples. I'm not talking of fake news which led to lynchings. I'm talking of small falsehoods that the government has propagated, which has affected minds. For instance, when this whole demonetization thing happened, the Prime Minister Modi's biggest thing was that the more cash you have in the economy, the greater the inflation. Statistics prove otherwise. For instance, Brazil has only 3.8% of its liquid cash as part of its GDP. Brazil's inflation is extremely high. Switzerland, for instance, you'll be surprised to know, has 10% of its cash in its GDP, and Switzerland has a nil inflation. That's one. Secondly, the government spread this whole thing. They said that we've just introduced a scheme where 6,000 rupees would be transferred into the bank accounts of pregnant women. Now, this is not something that Modi did. The point is that this is always a part of this whole, Indira Gandhi Matritva Sahyog Yojana, and this was happening in the pre-Modi days. This money was not transferred as if it was a new scheme, introduced. Secondly, the government also said that people who have Kisan credit cards will also have the RuPay cards, RuPay debit cards, which will be given to them for use. The point is that there was a Lok Sabha reply which stated that even before Modi made this scheme official and said we are introducing it, 56.6 lakh RuPay cards were already issued to people who had Kisan credit cards. So I'm just saying that we don't always understand this, or we don't read this, or we don't get these kind of impacts. But this also is fake news. So we need to kind of look at this and address. Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you was the inclination of these media houses towards the government in power. That is something that has been there for a long time, and we have instances of yellow journalism throughout our history.
Yes.
So,
yes.
There should be, and I think there is a distinct point of difference between fake news and paid media. Right?
Of course. That goes without saying. There are two things here. One is the news which is spreading, especially through WhatsApp groups and Twitter and Facebook. I'm differentiating between that and yellow journalism of the media. I'm saying both are equally destructive. There are actually three verticals here. The first vertical is that what is distributed through your Facebook and WhatsApp and all that are done primarily by non-journalists. It's done by people in the public. Okay? So that is one part which is equally offensive. The issue here is that the stuff that journalists are doing, in the sense that what you actually call paid media, and the fact that the media is completely paid. The point is that the only way to address this is to have more stringent guidelines. You need the courts to completely crack down, and ultimately journalists themselves have to course correct and do it. The point here is, and this will stop. We are slightly deviating, but I'll answer it because it's an important question. The point here is the only way to make media free is to make the media financially independent. The point here is that if you have a media controlled by honest readers And if readers pay ultimately for news, and news organizations, generate their own source of money and do not depend on advertisements and government advertisements and private advertisements, that is the only thing. And the idea is that the reason why it doesn't happen is that it's completely utopia. Thirdly, it does not happen. Okay, the point is, and till that happens, but the reason why this is also happening more now, Mrityunjay, and then it did, and you are seeing it much more, is also because you must understand that there is this great sense of fear and intimidation that this present regime has brought upon the media. And the media themselves, for instance, if you were absolutely clean, if you had no court cases, if you didn't have any land deals, if your own house was completely in order, my point is, why did the Indian Express have the guts to bring out a black page when emergency happened? Why did Statesman do that? Because at that point of time, these organizations were run purely on the basis of people's trust and less money. There's too much of money that has come into journalism now. You have journalists who get paid crazy salaries. They are on boards of different companies and corporations. My point is, the rot has set into every aspect of society, which includes journalism. You have to understand why this is also happening. Okay, so the point is, that's another topic, but it's an important issue here. The Modi government, my limited response to this also here is that this current government is managing to perpetrate this and allow its falsehoods to propagate is also because you're absolutely right. There are media houses who are either being floated with backing from the government directly or indirectly, or the fact that there is also a fear factor. There's fear factor and intimidation. But having said that, I'm also extremely happy, and some of us who are aware of this should be extremely happy, is that there is a fight back happening in this country. There is indeed a fight back happening in this country, and there is a great hope, because in spite of all this, if you have Republic or Times Now on one side, okay, you also have Wire on the other side, you have Scroll on the other side. The point is, yes, Mitra. Yes.
You mentioned Scroll and sites like these. These are sites basically which are present on the social media domain, right?
That's right.
On the other hand, where we talk about media houses like the Republic or the Times Now, and even to an extent where now we see Reliance stepping in to buy Viacom 18 and other media houses, when we see
they actually bought it. They masked it actually. So they actually bought it.
Yeah. So when we see such an aggressive expansion, where do you see the place for that standoff? I mean, like, where do you see that place for?
See, again, in terms of there are two ways to measure landscape, right? You can either measure it in terms of the sheer size of their investment and the money being put in and the number of eyeballs they want to influence. The other is if you look at everything from a community radio, for a small newspaper, for a newspaper in the village, or a small website. I'm just saying that the only way a huge big battle can be faced is to have little fights going on in different. You control your space, you control your own community, you let these small changes happen. I'm not even saying that this is a magic wand which is going to result in that. But I actually feel that in this country, a lot of our opinions are based on what is happening in the big metros and big cities. But there are people, there are soldiers and there are fighters in small villages, small communities who are really doing to fight this. And what happens out of sheer habit, I may have mentioned a Wire or Scroll because I find it a little refreshing. Okay, or you look at the work that somebody like P. Sainath is doing when he's when he travels through various villages and he's set up a beautiful network of just rural journalism and rural journalists. Or you see there's this lovely organization called Video Volunteers, and you must go look at that. Video Volunteers. Now, Video Volunteers, incidentally, they are now based in Goa. Though they don't do work only in Goa. They do work all over the country, and they've created a fantastic army. And I think we should get them in one of these programs of community videographers. And there are young men and women in different villages who are trained to use video and to fight for their rights. And all along, and they have learned to actually not only report but edit videos in the smallest of villages across the country. They do work in Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, everywhere, in Tamil Nadu. And now what they do is, suppose there's a problem in a village and there's a fight going on and there's a corrupt panchayat or a sarpanch who's looting the people. You have a 16-year-old girl who actually videographs it and does it, edits it, and transmits it to the main editing studio in Goa, in a village in Goa, very close to where I live, and they all do it and they broadcast it. Okay, and so I'm saying that these are little very encouraging fights that are going on. I know I've deviated completely from that. All right, but that's fine. Okay.
You
So
also give these videos to mainline television.
they go to mainland. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So suppose knows. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, this. What I'm saying is, I mean, we spoke and you all get the drift. I won't go through it for the lack of time, but I'm just looking at, of course, these are all the stuff that we had spoken about. I'll just attempt that before quickly going into this. My answer to that is both are equally problematic and equally dangerous, but both need not mean the same thing, because fake news by and large, and as we've seen, is spread through social media in a viral way, and it is not spread by journalists per se. I'm not saying journalists can be given a clean chit. Yellow journalism is done by journalists. It's as clear. I mean, they are the black sheep in that whole in that whole community. So the point is, it's very clear. It's both may have different impacts. They may have similar impacts. A bad piece of yellow journalism can lead to violence and so on and so forth. But often what happens is that in this day and age, because we feel that hidden hand which is unleashing the army of fake news soldiers also wants to control journalism and the media space. So often what they do is they make journalists as the perpetrators of fake news. I'll give you a very interesting thing that has just come, and I don't have it in the presentation. It was in the Times of India today. In a district, and this is very interesting, in a district called Lakhimpur Kheri in UP, which has seen a lot of lynchings, the district magistrate today has issued an order that the WhatsApp admins of journalist groups have to come and register with the district magistrate. Not WhatsApp admins of any other group. If there's a group of absolutely lumpen, lunatic, and fanatics who have a WhatsApp group in Lakhimpur Kheri and they are spreading violence, they don't need to register. But if you have a group of journalists or a group, a WhatsApp group where a journalist is an admin, he needs to come and register with the district magistrate, and then his entire history, geography, chemistry, biology, etc. will have to be completely scrutinized, and his Aadhaar card has to be given to the. If you are an admin of a journalist group in Lakhimpur Kheri, and if you add a member to that WhatsApp group, if you add somebody, if you add a participant, you cannot do that without the police's permission. So what I'm essentially saying is that while we will at any point of time raise our hands up and say yes, there is journalism, there is paid news, and that needs to be addressed. But what is happening is that gradually, instead of focusing on the people who are actually spreading fake news, how many people have been arrested for causing lynchings from the mob? But journalists are being targeted absolutely unfairly here, because they are seen as the public enemy. The point is, responsible journalists, responsible media people, and even responsible community people, responsible students papers, we actually are the enemy. The point is, and the point is, we are the enemy, and the target is that blame us for spreading fake news. Don't blame the perpetrators. Blame the people. Blame the media. So ultimately, this is again another challenge that we need to kind of need to address. Okay? See, this is important. See, as the 2019 general elections nears, the machinery is set to go full throttle to boost the government's agenda, and that is exactly what's happening. So a lot of the news and the information that you will get now is primarily towards this goal. What is the goal? The goal is the 2019 elections. If you see post the 2019 elections, you will see a huge drop in all these activities. It's linked to politics, and that's important. Let's look at this slide. Political campaigners in India hired public relations or consulting firms to spread online propaganda. Actually, there was a study by the Oxford Research Foundation. I'm quoting actually from there. The study says that a growing number of political parties are hiring PR firms or data analytics firms to spread disinformation, launch a political bot or trolling campaign, optimize search results, or spread voter suppression messages. That's one. BJP has formed hundreds of WhatsApp groups with its national president Amit Shah as a member in each one of them during the 2014 elections. Social media also emerged as a fundamental campaigning tool for Indian political parties. The BJP was accused of giving birth to internet trolls and fake photo forwards, and that's how the fire spread. And WhatsApp played a pivotal role in spreading rampant misinformation. And this is important. The destructive nature of WhatsApp-fueled misinformation campaign was evident in all its gruesomeness in serial lynchings across the country of people who were permanently selling, transporting, or storing beef. For instance, here, 15 people were charged in India for lynch killing of a Muslim man who allegedly ate beef. That was, and international media has picked this up. In June 2017, a young Muslim man was stabbed to death by a group of men after an alleged dispute over a seat on a train in northern Haryana. This again communal. In May, a transgender woman was killed and 3 others injured in Hyderabad when they were attacked by a mob of angry locals acting on WhatsApp rumors that the women were child traffickers. Again in Hyderabad, a man with mental health problems was beaten up in this place, Pahadish Sharif. In southern Hyderabad, there were WhatsApp rumors that he was a member of a kidnap gang. Then the police arrested 30 people after a man was lynched by rumors, again, child kidnapping on WhatsApp. So what's here again? In a spate of mob killings linked to WhatsApp, Mohammed Aslam was attacked along with 3 friends in Bidar in Karnataka. One of the children screamed, alarming locals who, inspired by rumors spread on social media about child kidnapping gangs, confronted the men and accused them of attempting to abduct the children. What is important here is that this has been noticed by even the Supreme Court of India, and look at what the Supreme Court has said. They were shocked at lynching across the country, lynchings, and said that the state has a sacrosanct duty to protect its citizens from unruly elements and perpetrators of orchestrated lynching and vigilantism. It said horrendous acts of mobocracy cannot be permitted to inundate the law of the land, and urged the government to enforce measures to protect citizens from a recurrent pattern of violence which cannot be allowed to become the new normal. This is the Supreme Court of India. So we are not making this up. We are not saying that the government is at fault just because we don't like them. My point is, this is documented and the Supreme Court of India has actually said it. And the point is, what is also happening, we must understand that this is really lowering the image of this country in the face of the world and the world media. I'll just take you through some of the headlines. Fake news often goes viral. WhatsApp ads warn India after mob lynchings. India wants WhatsApp to get a grip on fake news. Mobocracy is led by fake news resulting in lynching. Indian democracy judged by recent happenings of lynching led by fake news, and so on and so forth. So the point that I'm trying to make here, again, I'll go through it a little bit faster because of time constraints, but you'll kind of get the drift. And the war against fake news is on, and India too has realized it. What is important here is that recently WhatsApp brought out a huge front page ad asking people to kind of fight fake news, and they gave out steps to see what we can do to combat it. But the point here is, let us look at this fight back, and that is what I was telling us, that there is a fight back, and this whole session is about fight back. Facebook has announced its first partnership in the country with Chennai-based Asian School of Journalism. Now, this is basically to work with the Asian School of Journalism and journalists on how exactly to combat it. Okay. Now, they've also extended its collaboration with the Mumbai-based Boom Live. Now, Boom Live is actually one of the organizations which are taking a massive role in training and influencing and documenting fake news on a daily basis. Again, run by an excellent former colleague called Govindraj Etiraj, who moved out of mainstream media to set this. He was earlier the editor of Economic Times and Bloomberg, and he's doing this. Now, 3 news portals are dedicated to the busting of fake news, backed openly by people who have displayed some record of credibility, or at least more than the perpetrators of fake news. They are Op India, Alt News, and Boob Live. And just check what Govind says. Most of the fake news is originating from people aligned with the BJP. People aligned with the Congress have not propagated fake news. I don't believe that completely, though, with the same frequency yet. The problem of fake news and inaccurate information is more acute in TV. They are always in a hurry to put out news without checking the veracity and the facts that says Pratik Sinha, the founder of All News, says. What is also important is, let's just look at briefly what is happening internationally, because various universities and journalism schools are also doing it. The Harvard School, the Schonstein Center has also started this, and they have this thing called the First Draft, which is an organization or a body that they've created within the Schonstein Center at Harvard to actually combat it. And what they do is they are encouraging not just journalism students but other students to join this program, and they do it through innovative fieldwork, research and educational resources. And they are also supporting journalists and journalism students there to essentially track, establish, disseminate proper news and arrest it at its source. That's very important. I think what is important here is to really, and that's a very good initiative that Jadavpur University and other universities is doing. You just need to go down to the grassroots and arrest it and sensitize people. And that's what people, countries like America are also doing it. What is important is that this is another very interesting project that is being done in Brazil called Comprova. What is the project? Comprova brings together journalists from 24 Brazilian media companies to identify and explain rumors, fabricated content and manipulation tactics that might influence the 2018 presidential election campaign. My point is, why don't we do that? We have an election campaign coming up in 2019. Why can't newsrooms all across either the country or different regions get together? For instance, in Calcutta, you can have 4 or 5 major publications setting up a unified newsroom, like a unified command center. Okay, basically, and their job will not just be to track fake news that is coming out from government or otherwise, or from the villages and districts, but essentially track fake news, rumors, things that are appearing on WhatsApp and Facebook, and immediately arresting it and putting it out in the next day's paper, saying, look, this is what is coming today. This is the flow of fake news that is coming. Don't believe in it. This is the truth and this is false. And you can't have every newspaper doing it, so have a unified newsroom to actually do it. So stuff like that, and that's what they are doing. So, and Comprova, and what is it for? Comprova is designed on mobile technology and will send project debunks on social media, and in particular WhatsApp, to inform voters about the information they see online. We plan to study how information is changed. So you need to, my point is, fake news has to be debunked live, it has to be debunked immediately. There is no point waiting for 24 hours and 30 hours, the damage is done then. The point is, it has to be done as it is unfolding. And that is what this project does, and that's what we probably need to do. And there's another project that's happening, which is the Schonstein Center in Harvard is doing, called Cross-Check. It's an online verification collaboration that began in 2017. Its first project brought together 37 newsroom partners in France and UK to help report false, misleading and confusing claims that circulated online the 10 weeks leading up to the French presidential election. What is the aim? To provide public with necessary information to form their own conclusions about the information that they receive. By working collaboratively, it hopes to more quickly ascertain what is not factual or reliable and to give that information to newsrooms and the public. I'm sure some of it may be happening, in India as well, in this part of the world as well, and everywhere. But I think it needs to be a more collaborative effort, and responsible news organizations need to very, very importantly look at this and plan around it. Okay. Again, these are my presentations available. Anybody wants it, I can mail it. I mean, these are just examples, and this is, I think, something that I really need to talk about. What are the mistakes that the mainstream media in India make? Okay, I will still put my hand up and say Indian media is not primarily responsible for creating fake news. It's the whole ecosystem has become that. The media itself is not primarily responsible. Second, Indian media is responsible for not doing fact checks before working on and putting out fake news. Probably they're not even realizing it's fake, not doing enough fact checks, and that is what projects like Cross-Check and Comprova can actually do. Thirdly, media is reporting on WhatsApp-induced lynching and other violence, but not doing enough to ask for deterrence and punishments, and taking up the responsibility of creating engagement in society to recognize and stall dissemination of fake news. It's basically more of what I've already said. Okay, what can Indian journalists and organizations do? This is important. Have a regional team drawn from publications across the state to act as fact checkers. B. Publications pledge that no stories will be run with news with dubious origins. It has to be a pledge taken, and they have to be an ombudsman to actually check it. See, ultimately you have to have self-censorship and self-regulation. Otherwise, it will never work. Thirdly, publications should jointly run front-page campaigns and also on their social media pages, calling out fake news and urging people not to act and spread it. Speed and unity of media across the region is critical to this. Print, online and broadcast should also make people aware of legal options to the public if they are victims of fake news disseminated by media. I've got that also. Set up a crowd-funded trust to constantly engage with Facebook, Twitter and other social media giants to use both technology and law in fighting against fake news. My point is that we constantly say, oh, but Twitter has put this out, WhatsApp has put it out, Facebook has put it out. But once it is out on Facebook and WhatsApp, it's a huge struggle to put it down. It's a huge struggle to put it down. Okay, and so I'll just go through this before I end, because I've been reminded that I need to close this now. I'm just going to the last slide, that there are also options. I mean, we're not without options. There are laws, there are bodies to which we can also report. One is, of course, News Broadcast Association, the Indian Broadcast Foundation. They are all organizations which can accept complaints and act. Then, of course, you have the Press Council of India, which has no teeth, but it is still a statutory body. It is a minor deterrent. And you have sections in the IPC 153 and 195 where actually if an FIR can be actually launched for wantedly spreading provocative news. But the point here is that ultimately I would end by saying that we need to sensitize ourselves as a society, work together, and I think instead of taking up very, very big projects, work in smaller areas and work with smaller communities, and I think that is basically the answer to all this. Thank you.